So today I'm going to start by giving you an overview of where we're at with solar, particularly in Australia, and then uh, talk a little bit about electric vehicles, which are becoming a part of the deal in terms of our use of energy as individuals. And then finally, hopefully we have time to talk a bit about our energy bills and what's happening with them and what sort of tariffs and choices we have and how much we can reduce them by. So this particular slide shows on the bottom right-hand side how the price per unit of solar installation, which is the watt. Usually we talk about 6 kilowatts or 10 kilowatt peak solar power from the solar panels, how the price per watt has dropped in the last 12 or 13 years, and how you can see it's now less than, that's installed in the home, it's now less than $1 per watt. So if we have a 5 or 6 kilowatt system, we should expect to pay $5,000 or $6,000 or so. And just to give you an idea of their performance, of course, when we talk about watts, we talk about the rate at which we are generating electricity from the panels. A typical kilowatt system installed on our roof will generate 3 units of electricity, 3 kilowatt hours in a winter day, and double that in summer. Some people ask questions about cleaning or whether we need to have them cleaned every now and again. Personally, I see no point in that, and I think we have enough rain to get them clean. If they lose 2 or 3% because of dust accumulation between rainy periods, it's not a problem. Also, the other part of the solar system, as seen in this picture, is this little box that we see on our walls, often next to our electricity box, called the inverter. The inverter is probably one of the weak links within the solar system because it's the brains of the system, but at the same time, it's likely to fail within 10 years or so rather than 20 or 30 or 40 years, as solar panels are designed to last. And of course, apart from that and apart from the panels, we have some people now, a lot of people are installing the batteries. This is optional, of course. And then all this is connected to our electricity system within the home. When we talk about the inverter size and performance, the inverter converts the DC, the direct current that's generated by the solar panels, to AC, alternating current, which we use in our homes. Okay? Please feel free to interrupt if you have questions or you want more explanations.
Okay, I'm going to take the opportunity then, Wasim. I'm looking at that graph of the prices per kilowatt per watt hour.
Yeah.
It appears like about 2001, it stopped going down. And are we expecting any more price decreases, or is that it? Have we now reached minimum price on solar?
At the moment, it can't be a lot cheaper. Let's put it that way. This is basically mainly reflecting the cost of installation and shipment and so on. The actual cost of panels is so low. I actually saw a news item the other day, and I think Eckhart saw it as well, which shows that in Germany they're using solar panels as fences instead of our bond fencing. Apparently, it's cheaper than timber fencing or bond fencing. They're just putting the panels and making them generate a bit of electricity for nothing because they're cheaper. Sorry, Mark, you had a question or a comment? If you could,
just a comment that if you were to put in inflation into that, I would have thought it's probably still going down because of the rate of loss of the loss of value of the dollar.
That's true.
The latest info was that due to the dominance of the Chinese as manufacturers, there is an indication that solar prices will increase by 9% soon. So because they can, and so the development of the price even further down will probably be put as a hold at this stage, but for long term it should be coming down even more.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. So certainly one of the good news items that we heard recently as of May 2026 in Australia, solar electricity has surpassed coal-fired generated electricity, which is not a bad thing. And these are some numbers that show you how many installations we have. And as you know, over 40% of Australian households have solar. And overall in Australia, it only makes up 14 or 15% of the total generation. But in South Australia, it certainly, along with other renewables, we go beyond 70% of our electricity generation from solar. And also the batteries are getting more and more, and we'll talk a little more about them. So on the right-hand side, you can see on the top the number of installations. And you can see in 2025, the number went down, maybe because of saturation. But since the battery scheme has started, they've picked up again because a lot of people are putting on more solar with the battery, or putting solar and battery at the same time. And the bottom graph shows the number of batteries installed in Australia over the years and how in 2025 it suddenly shot up, and we'll talk a little more about that. What size solar system should we have? This is a very good question. I guess typically for a typical Australian home, maybe if we want to be if we want to generate as much electricity as we consume, typically we need 6 or so kilowatt installation to produce the electricity over a calendar year, which is roughly equivalent to the amount we are consuming. Having said that, the latest trends, and because of the cheap cost of solar, particularly if you want to add a little more to the size, it doesn't seem to add a lot to the cost. And that's why people are putting more and more solar panels on their roofs, and quite often they're virtually covering all their roofs with panels. So a typical household now is putting 10 to 11 kilowatt systems on their roofs on average in 2025. Having said that, if we want to have an idea about how many panels we need and where best to put them on our roof, we can actually start the ball rolling by using this website, the Sunspot calculator, which is an independent thing which will show us our roof and tell us where to put our panels on it and tells us what size we need. I think I went, did I go to? Yeah. Just to clarify some of the things, some of the facts about installing solar on our roofs. Some people think that if we don't install solar on facing the sun, facing north, we are going to incur a huge penalty. If you look at the table on the top right-hand side and look at Adelaide, which is the one before last, you will see that having solar panels facing north and putting them on our roof will give us 99% of the maximum possible. But even putting them facing the opposite to that, facing south, will give us 69% of the total possible. And certainly east and west are very good, and particularly west is recommended because in the late afternoon, we need a lot more electricity, and it'll be good if we can maximize our generation during that time of the day. If we look at the bottom graph, this is an indication of how the output power from a solar panel changes with temperature. You may or may not be surprised to hear that at higher temperatures, the panels incur a penalty, and usually the panel temperature is 20 or 30 degrees higher than the air temperature. So typically in summer, they'll be at 60 or 70 degrees, and this will, as you can see, incur a penalty of up to 15–20% reduction in the power output. The other issue that is a problem and we have to be mindful of is partial shading. Many of our roofs are shaded by trees and other buildings, possibly. And this is quite a serious issue because once one panel is shaded, the whole subsystem connected to it will also stop generating electricity, which is a bit of a problem. Having said that, there are some particular products where individual panels have their own inverters, and we can use them, and we can only incur the penalty from the shaded areas. Does that make sense? Right. If we move into the next slide, this is just something that I keep hearing about, and it frustrates me when I talk to people. A lot of people, when they want to increase the size of their solar system or install batteries, the first thing they're told by installers is that, oh, your solar system, your panels are 10 years old or 15 years old, chuck them out and we'll give you brand new ones and they're much better. Well, this is all rubbish, because the solar panels are meant to last 30 or 40 years. There's nothing that will break down in them. Their efficiency, if it reduces, it'll be by a few percent over 20 years. So if we can help it, we should keep using them for as long as possible and not to listen to what's being said. Having said that, as I said, other components such as contacts or inverters may need some service or replacement, maybe after 10 years. And many of the panels nowadays are actually have a warranty of 25 years or 20 years quite normally.
Wasim, just quickly, are new panels more efficient? Do they generate more electricity per panel than the old ones?
It's very fractional. I mean, it could be 1 or 2% more, but not a lot more. And what the salespeople tell you is they're a lot more efficient, but in reality, technology has moved on a little bit, but not hugely. Mark, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah, I've just signed the contract to put on solar, And I was amazed to see that currently solar panels are now over 20% efficient.
Yes.
And photosynthesis by plants is only 3% efficient. And part of that, I suppose, is plants can only make use of certain wavelengths in incoming light. I wondered how much of the radiation is converted into, are all the wavelengths useful for solar panels? Do you know?
No, they're still relatively inefficient, but they only can absorb certain wavelengths still, and that's why they're only 20, 25, 27. I think the record now is about 27 or 28% efficiency, simply because they only can convert a certain part of the solar spectrum into electricity. Unlike solar heat, where we can actually get a thermal collector which converts the solar radiation into heat at an efficiency of 70 or 80 or 90%. So that's the difference. And if I'm not mistaken, Mark, I believe plants convert 0.3% rather than 3%. I could be wrong, but my memory tells me it's a lot less than certainly solar panels.
Maybe it's three. Maybe I think it's 100% of the wavelengths that they do use.
Yeah,
and then the inefficiency comes later in converting it into carbohydrate.
that's correct. Yeah, yeah. Okay, next slide. Home batteries. Before we go to home batteries, I had a short video. Maybe I can try and share with you if I can work it out, just to give you an idea of the status of solar and the impact on the grid. I'm just trying to stop sharing and then start sharing again using my. So a little bit about home batteries. Obviously, the idea of them is that they store the excess energy during sunshine hours for use in the evening and nighttime until the sun shines the next morning. Even with the 30 or so % government subsidy, we can't really justify them on purely economic basis, but with so much solar being installed on roofs, the feed-in tariff we've been getting in the last few years has been dwindling, and now it could be 1 or 2 cents per unit when we give it to the grid during daytime. And you heard about how cheap electricity is during daytime. And in a little while, I'll be talking about some of the tariffs, and one of them now is going to be the option of getting 3 hours of free electricity during the day. So also they can be subsidized through so-called virtual networks, where the electricity provider has control of our battery, which is sometimes not very useful for us. And I believe that in the future, also home batteries will be superseded and complemented by the batteries of electric vehicles. And this is a typical, if you like, data for home batteries. Just to give you an idea of how much people have responded to this cheap battery program that the government announced on the 1st of July last year. Up to now, we've had 400,000 households, small businesses, and community organizations have installed these batteries. This makes quite a large contribution to the grid and to the stability of the grid. So you can imagine how it's surged from 200 systems per day into 1,300 systems per day by the end of last year's. And this is adding considerable, if you like, strength and stability and resilience to our grid. And also it's saving people a lot of money, because now instead of paying 50 or so cents per unit of electricity, they are now using their own power, which they generate, instead of getting 1 or 2 cents per unit during the day. Sorry, I have two hands. I'm not sure which one came up first. We'll start with Tom, maybe. Unmute yourself, please, Tom.
Marco was first, but since I've got you, I'll take the opportunity. I bought a battery, it was only 10 kilowatt hours, and I can see here none of the average is below 20 during that whole period.
This is after the 1st of July 2025. Certainly you probably bought the battery before that, probably, and I'll tell you the story in a minute. Let me just ask Marco what he wants to comment on. If you unmute yourself.
Well, I just wanted to say that thanks mostly to your advice, I'm not buying a battery with my solar setup as not a heavy user of electricity. And it now seems to be more and more apparent to me that for most people, putting in a battery is a rather expensive way of having bragging rights to not having the odd being in credit, and really the big winner is the grid, not the individual.
Well, let me respond to that. I think people like us who A, use energy wisely, and B, have small families, and C, stay at home, it doesn't always make a lot of sense to spend $10,000 or $15,000 on a battery if our power bill per year is less than $1,000. Having said that, I've seen lots of households where their regular energy bill over 3 months goes into $2,000 or $3,000, and for them, they'll get their money back reasonably quickly with the battery installation, because even though they have solar, they sell it all cheaply to the grid, and then they come in the evening and use 20 or 30 kilowatt hours, especially if they're a medium or large size family, and pay 50 cents per unit and end up with hefty power bills despite their solar. So it's horses for courses, Mark, and we shouldn't, as I say, we can do our numbers and decide whether it's good for us or not. Having said that, I can show, as Tom noticed, as you can see, Tom, that the average at the start of after the middle of last year, the average was just 10 or 15 kilowatt hours. Having said that, it's now a lot higher. Sorry, I'm wrong about that. It was about 20 when it started. Simply because, again, when you get a quote, the extra 5 or 10 kilowatt hours don't cost a lot more once the installer comes, and you get more, obviously, subsidy for a bigger one. So once you let them in, and with the subsidy, they can convince you to use 20. And this is why this has been actually rising steadily, and as you can see around now, the average is actually over 30, and it's been rising steadily over time. And this is why the government had to make the changes in the subsidy, and the next slide will show the changes. But because of the changes in the subsidy, you can see from the start of May, from the 1st of May, this has gone down, and it's now more like 20, and it's likely to stay that way, certainly for the foreseeable future. So, as we were saying, there has been a huge increase in the demand for batteries. And as you can see, our energy minister, with his grin, has certainly had a popular program. The rebate value from the 1st of May, went down a fraction per small scale certificate, but also it only applies for batteries up to 14 kilowatt hours. If you want to install between 14 and 28 kilowatt hours now, you only get 60% of the current subsidy. And if you go further than 28, up to 50, you only get 15% of the subsidy that we had prior to May. So this is going to make a difference to the size. And it was simply a response. The government didn't expect such a huge uptake and such large installations very quickly. And having said that, the rebate will continue until 2030, but every 6 months, it will reduce a little to reflect the likely reduction in the cost of batteries over time. And this is what they've been doing with solar panels. We still get subsidy for solar panels, but it keeps going down because the cost of solar panels has come down quite a lot. Any question on that before we move on? Margaret, did you have a question? You don't want to unmute?
Yeah. I'm a bit concerned that the cheapness of PV is encouraging people to put in large systems and then use more electricity, if you know what I mean. That they could probably be more frugal if they had, I think it should be cheap, but it's just that some people say, oh, I put in 10 kilowatt hours and use as much electricity as I like. They had a smaller system, they might use a bit of sort of...
Yeah, but you'd be surprised how liberally people use their electricity, especially if you have a family of 4, 5, or 6 with a few teenagers, each one of them in their own room with their own heating or cooling and with their electronics all going, computers and other things. It's how much electricity we need for the time after sunset until the next time the sun rises. That should determine how much power we have or how much energy we store in our battery. And this determines the size of the battery. And this is why it doesn't make a lot of economic sense for us to have batteries, or people like us to have batteries, as Mark was referring to earlier. Okay, let's move on. It's a bit of a complicated curve, but it shows you what a battery does. So the power from the battery is those shaded areas, and the state of charge of the battery is that yellow line. And you can see over the 24-hour period, the state of charge of the battery starts here. For example, this is a 30 kilowatt hour battery. So obviously the state of charge goes down, and then particularly when we wake up in the morning and we need to have breakfast and get ready for work, it drops the state of charge quite a lot, but then the sun starts feeding power to the battery, and it keeps getting to 100% of charge, and then during the day we can use our solar to charge our hot water system and all other electrical appliances. And then when we come home, obviously it continues being used, but sometimes when we come home and we need an awful lot of electricity in one go, the battery, if you like, discharge capacity is not big enough, and we need a little tiny bit from the grid here because we are drawing electricity too quickly. And then when we do the cooking for dinner, we need more electricity, which we get from the battery, and we recharge a little the hot water system, and until we get into the midnight, and so it goes on. So you can see in this case, the battery has enabled us actually to sell a little bit of electricity to the grid and buy a little bit of electricity from the grid, but mainly we're self-sufficient with our own electricity. And you can see there are lots of other little events that happen. Obviously, we try and get these things to happen during the time when the sun is shining and we're generating electricity.
Wasim, what's the size of the battery in this graph?
It's 30 kilowatt hour for quite a large family.
That's a big battery.
Yes. Yeah, but as you can see, there are sometimes here, despite that, the battery cannot release the power quickly enough for the family to use when they all come back from school and from home, and they're running various things, maybe turned on the heating or the cooling, etc. Okay. This is something that I quite encourage people to do, and this is to try and think of ways of using our electricity, if we have solar, during the time when solar is available. And that means trying to either use smart technologies or even simple technologies or our human decision making to run, for example, our dishwashers and our washing machines and other things when there's plenty of solar being generated from our homes. But one thing that's happening rather quickly now is the fact that we are getting more and more smart technologies. And as you know, probably, that heating and cooling is one of the bigger components of our energy use. And certainly the idea of smart thermostat has become quite popular, even though we don't hear much about it. In most of our homes, we have the usual bit, something on the wall, which we turn on and off. There are lots of smart thermostats, and we can actually purchase them from hardware shops or even online. And if I may, I'd like to show you a short video to describe how smart thermostats and other smart systems work in the home. So I don't know if you want to stop the... So as you have seen, that especially as a way of reducing our cost and improving our comfort, there's no reason why we can't turn on our heating and cooling if the sun is still shining, and that will make our house ready for us to be comfortable in the later hours. If I can move on to the next slide. There are a lot of ways of controlling the time at which we use our electricity. We don't have to go and change all our thermostats. There are some so-called smart plugs, which are the ones being shown down here, which we can buy, where, well, these are the smart plugs, where we can just plug in the power point and then plug our appliance, and then we are able to control when they're turned on and off on our mobile, but also we can see how much energy is being used through that particular point. And there's nothing wrong with going back to the old timer switch that many of us are familiar with and only cost a few dollars, to use those for applications where we don't have to turn on something during the evening or the times when there's high electricity costs. We can install these and run our dishwasher or washing machine or other appliances either during the peak daytime period when there's a lot of sunshine, or even at night when electricity is cheaper. So all these options are possible, and certainly I encourage people with that go to work to turn this on to cook their meals using electric ovens or cooktops, so that by the time they come home, the meal is ready and they've used their cheap electricity from their solar rather than use a lot of expensive electricity when they come home. We talk a little bit about electric cars, and I was tempted by this photo that I saw recently, and I like the slogan of driving on sunshine. As you probably know, electric vehicles are now quite popular because of the obvious reasons of the escalating fuel prices. And certainly, if nothing else, this war has increased the popularity of electric vehicles considerably. And instead of having a choice of so many available to buy immediately, now people actually have to wait to get the electric vehicles, and people who sell them are, have been really overwhelmed by the response from the general public for obvious reasons. Electric vehicles certainly have a lot of potential in this country, and there's no reason why we can't have enough solar power generated in our home to run both our home and our vehicle. And this is a bit of a snapshot. Certainly, some previous fears about electric vehicle batteries being of short life and we need to replace them have gone now. Most electric vehicles, well, all of them, unless if we use them as taxis, will outlast the age. The battery will outlast the age of the car, and they're getting very cheap. You can actually get electric vehicles for $25,000-$30,000. And certainly there has been a scheme for novated leases that has also helped increase the sales of electric vehicles. Unfortunately, this scheme is being wound down with the new budget. It's been made clear that there's not going to be any more tax reductions for people getting a leased vehicle through their work to pay less tax. EV sales have shot up obviously recently. I saw some figures in the ACT. 30% of the car sales at the moment are electric vehicles. And also there have been lots and lots of increase of fast charging locations of electric vehicles around the country. So there's no problem now going all around, even some of the remote areas, and not being able to charge the battery. And some people who've gone around Australia on electric vehicles have said their experience hasn't been bad. And in some cases, they had to stop for a coffee while their car is being charged, and then they kept going afterwards. Certainly, the range of electric vehicles has now gone up considerably. So typically, we get 400 or 500k out of them. And sorry, Lynn, you had a question, if you want to unmute.
Well, just a comment in that my relatives who live in northern New South Wales left on Friday in their electric vehicle to drive to Darwin, and after that they planned to drive down to Adelaide to see me, and after that they planned to go to Victoria to see my brother, and then up the coast of New South Wales to visit my sister at Newcastle before returning home to northern New South Wales. And they have sorted out that they can do that on the electric vehicle.
Yes, there are lots of apps and other technology available to show you where are the surrounding charging stations, and sometimes even whether they're busy or not and how much they charge. But of course, if you can charge your electric vehicle from home, you're paying almost nothing. But even if you charge it in a charging station, you pay the commercial rates for the electricity, which is not that great, and it's certainly much lower than even the old price of petrol. There are lots of links. I'm not going to go and open now. I'll just continue. This is a technology which I am very impressed with, and I know Ewan is one of the leaders in this area, and he's got his own development. Maybe he can share with us in a minute. But I'm expecting most of us to be using our vehicles to run our homes, and even, if necessary, export some of our car battery power into the grid if we want to make money. The technology has developed very quickly, and there are things called vehicle to grid and vehicle to home and vehicle to load, which are available in most cars, and the technology is moving very quickly. It's possible physically now to actually connect your vehicle to the grid, but it costs probably several $1,000s, and I believe Ewan has developed some technology which is not quite vehicle to grid, it's vehicle to home, and he tells us it costs about $2,000. Maybe you can say a few words about it, Ewan.
Yes, I might explain that I'm focused on what I call the low road. They take the high road and you take the low road, and we'll get there before you. The low road is a vehicle to load at 3.6 kilowatts. If we stay under that, we don't have the fire risks that people have to deal with in apartment buildings. We also don't have to deal with the distributors if you keep it under 20 amps. But the vehicle to load is a low-cost method, and using that to power circuits directly in the home or to feed it into another grid inverter through its solar input are two methods that we're using. But what I wanted to raise my hand about and ask you is that ACT and New South Wales have got this legislation called the right to charge, where they now don't have to get the body corporate permission to be able to charge if they've got a reasonable proposal. South Australia is probably the worst state in that we have to get 85% buy-in from the body corporate before people can put in electric vehicle charging. And with the legislation in New South Wales, South Australia used to be a leader, and we're not a leader anymore in this area.
So, sorry to interrupt you. So you're talking about apartment buildings here?
Yes.
Certainly this is something obviously the government needs to be alerted to and told to try and do. But the technology you're talking about is available for individual homes, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is, but it's
so
also...
how do you isolate yourself from the grid while you are using vehicle to load?
Well, with our vehicle to home solution, you break from the grid and make to the car when the car is enabled, and there's a 10 millisecond changeover time. So that
how is that? Do you have to turn things on and off somewhere, or do you need additional switches, or how does it work?
It just, as soon as you plug in the vehicle to load, it enables the coil in the changeover relay. So it immediately changes over to power your lighting circuit, your kitchen circuit, and one other load circuit directly from the car. And if the car overloads or runs out and gets to the setting, it just drops back to the grid. So
of course,
it's just a flicker you see when it's changing over. That's all.
Okay, so you actually just flick a switch and it happens, and it can charge a number of your circuits.
Oh yeah, power a number of your circuits. But the vehicle to grid solution emulates the solar panel array and feeds it straight into the inverter, which then synchronizes with the grid.
Yeah.
So both of them are low-cost method. The vehicle to home is only about $1,000, and it's $2,000 for the one that feeds into your solar inverter.
That's very, very interesting, and certainly I'm sure there'll be lots of people who want to do it rather than install a home battery, particularly people like us who don't need a lot of power to use during the evening. So, Tom, you had a question?
Yeah, this is possibly more for Evan, but or Ewan. Are modern electric vehicles, do they need to have special setup to allow this, or is it all part of the charging that we show here on the screen? What's required?
Well, the beauty about it is it requires nothing, and because the vehicle to load is seen as an auxiliary to power your barbecues and things that you're away. So you don't actually have to have any apps on your phone or any requirement, and most of the vehicles can change from charging to discharging without having to operate the app on the phone. So, we're now developing a bidirectional cable where you can plug in, and then the external signals like price signals or demand signals or renewable energy signals can change your car from charging to discharging.
So most vehicles have this option of so-called vehicle to load, where you can plug in any appliance and which uses normal electricity, and it works in it. So it's
even Tesla now.
It's using this capability to run your home.
Yes, but it's
part of your home, at least.
It's not synchronized with the grid, so people
it's separating it from the grid. Mark, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, just to get away a little bit from electric vehicles, is powering vehicles with alcohol from crops and diesel from
if I can interrupt
oil seeds, is that completely dead now?
Mark, after you sent me your email, I've added a couple of slides which I'll come into in a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So maybe
it's now 3:22.
Right. Well, let's move on. This time last year, I was actually in Brazil, and Brazil uses a lot of bioenergy for fueling their vehicles. And I've got a couple of slides that demonstrate that. So 47% of the energy supply in Brazil is from renewable sources, and it's mainly they have a bit of hydropower, but the green part on the diagram on the top right is bioenergy, and you can see it's very popular, particularly as biofuel. And let's see the details of that in the next slide. Brazil is a big country, and I think it's the 6th country in car production. And most cars in Brazil now can use either completely 100% ethanol, or they can use petrol with 30% ethanol. And this has been working. This actually started as a response to the oil shock of the 1970s, and they developed their technology. As you probably know, Brazil produces a lot of sugar from sugarcane, and they are using some of that sugarcane to make biofuel and using it for running their cars rather than selling sugar. And I've heard that especially in the years when sugar prices are low, they make more biofuel and vice versa. And every petrol station you go to in Brazil, you have a choice of either the petrol with the blend of ethanol or 100% ethanol, and it's been working quite comfortably for many years. I don't know if, and also they have some 15% addition to diesel as biodiesel. You had your hand up, Jock. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yeah. Are there emissions in the carbon dioxide produced from biofuels?
There will be, but certainly the emissions is a lot less if you think about if you like, the circular movement of carbon dioxide. I think I have some figures about the emissions, and certainly they reduce it considerably through the use of biofuel. Let me just see if I can come to the next slide. Production. No, I don't have values of emissions, but certainly there is a considerable reduction of emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, as a result of using biofuels.
There is a comment there, Wasim. It says this produces 61% life cycle greenhouse emissions reduction.
Yeah, yeah. Where is that? I can't see it.
On the left.
I actually wrote it, but I forgot that I've written it. Yeah.
On the left-hand side.
Yes, 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 yes. So this is the evidence that we have. So hopefully that answers your question, Mark. Now, I'm conscious of the time that we should be stopping, and I have a whole lot of slides about energy bills and various tariffs and how to reduce them, both in terms of using less energy, but more so on how to choose the right provider for your energy. Do you think we should leave them for the next session or for a future session, everyone? Or